Welcome to my channel. This is JC Rock and Metal Reviews. My name is John. Today I'm doing a review of the self-titled debut studio album by The Clash, released on April 8th, 1977 through CBS Records. Now, if you remember The Clash, you might remember them more as like a new wave or even like a reggae band, but when they released this album, they were just straightforward punk rock. So in this video, I'll be talking about the album, the band, the lineup. I'll give some history on the band as well. So The Clash began in London. They formed in 1976. They were part of like the original wave of the British punk rock scene. They later changed their style, doing like a lot of reggae and rockabilly and other musical genres. They mostly had a consistent lineup. So we had a lead vocalist and rhythm guitarist, Joe Strummer. He actually passed away in 2002, but he was like mostly the man behind the music. We had Mick Jones. He was the lead guitarist and vocalist, and he later went on to form the band Big Audio Dynamite. The bass player Paul Simonon. So he was in The Clash, but then he was in some different bands afterwards. And drummer Nicky Topper-Heaton, who actually left the group in 1982 because of substance abuse problems, and he went to play with different bands. So this album is it has 14 songs, a runtime of 35 minutes. Most of the songs are between like 1 and 2 minutes. There's one song that's like 6 minutes. I'll talk about that later. This album was released like in the UK, and it wasn't released in the US until 1979. And that version had a slightly different like track listing. Some of the same songs, some different songs. Like I said, it's a very punk rock album with the loud guitars, the punk rock attitude. And this band, they talk a lot about politics, specifically like left-wing politics. Joe Strummer was a socialist. The lyrics reflected that a lot. They also had an album later called Sandinista, which was named after the Nicaraguan Sandinistas. Now, like I said, there are 14 songs. I'm not going to go through everything like track by track. I'll just talk about the important ones. I'll talk about the lyrics, and most of the songs do have that typical sound, the punk rock sound, the guitars, the bass lines, and just that whole attitude. So let me talk about them now. The opening song is called Jeannie Jones. This was named after our famous madam in London during the 70s. She was also a pop singer in the 60s, so that kicks off the album. The next song, Remote Control, this is a very like rebellious punk rock song. It's going against like oppression, conforming to the status quo. They were against the police and big business and record companies, and this was one of their singles. It's just a short, like to the point punk rock song. Next song is called I'm So Bored with the USA. Now, the song title exactly pretty much tells you what it's about. It's against like American society. They're talking a lot about drugs, the American government helping dictatorships in the third world, criticizing Richard Nixon. And this is an album that came out, like a few years after the Watergate scandals. Next song, White Riot, another rebellious punk rock song talking about like classes and race. This was a very controversial song at the time, and another one they released as a single. Next is London's Burning. Now, not to be confused with London Calling. That was the title of the album and song released in 1979. That was like 2 albums later. But this is a song about London at the time, they talk about traffic, people watching TV and getting brainwashed by the news, and just another rebellious punk rock song. Another song, Career Opportunities, a very political song talking about the situation in England at the time, talking about unemployment, young people not being able to get jobs, and the police force. This is another straightforward punk rock song. And like I said, this album is mostly punk rock, but they did do a cover song called Police and Thieves. And that was the first song to incorporate a reggae into their sound. That's something they would do a lot much more often on the subsequent albums. So it is a rebellious type of song, and also the longest song at 6 minutes. The last song I'll talk about is called Garageland, and this is a response to a music journalist who basically called them a garage band and said they should go back to the garage. So they wrote like a response to it. It's a very fun song. It's very upbeat. It's punk rock, lots of energy, and that's the last song on the album. So In conclusion, I definitely recommend you check out this album if you like 70s punk rock. It really is a good album. Has a sound similar to, like, I guess, like the Sex Pistols, Nevermind the Bollocks, that like raw, edgy, like British punk rock. But on the subsequent albums, they changed their sound, doing like different styles. So when I was younger, I remember the album Combat Rock, and that's actually celebrating another anniversary with 40 years next month. But that album had these hits like Rock the Casbah, Should I Stay or Should I Go? And it was a completely different band. But this is just, the band when I first started out. Straightforward punk rock. And it's a pretty cool band. I listened to all their albums, actually. They only have 6 albums. So there may be a ranking in the future of this band. So anyway, let me know what you thought. So it's Friday. So this weekend... the new releases I'm looking at are Destruction, a thrash metal band, Papa Roach, that's new metal, but a band that I've always liked. And there's another band, I think it's called Insight or Ignite. I got to look it up. But it's has the stepson of Max Cavalera. Please check out the other videos, and I'll see you in the next one.